Welcome to Connected Conversations. I am Elena Petrova, founder and CEO of Adastra Inc. Let's share the inspiring stories, strengthen our bonds, and pave the way for a brighter future, one conversation at a time.
They were able to increase the number of students that enrolled in college by, I believe, 20% just from a text message.
Welcome to Connected Conversations. We are here back to DuPont Circle, our home place, and I'm incredibly excited to have the guest who is local to us, Brian Kathman, who is the serial entrepreneur and technology expert, as well as AI expert. So today we are going to be talking about how AI technology can enhance our communication, because a lot of us are saying that perhaps we are so AI optimized right now, and what is left for human connection. But maybe perhaps it's different. Maybe AI can optimize us. Imagine the world where everything around us when it comes to communication, our emails, Teams, text messages, everything is being optimized for efficiency, empathy, productivity. What is left for a human connection? What can be improved for a human connection?
Yeah.
And what do you think?
It's an exciting topic. I talk about it every day. And from my standpoint, I think a good way for people to think about the impact of AI on communication in particular is just think about the changes that we've gone through in the last 30, 40 years. When the internet came onto the scene, there were a lot of people that were worried that it was going to eliminate newspapers or eliminate stores. And we still have stores. We still have newspapers. They're different. They operate differently. So and then you had mobile phone. And I actually was involved in building a business where we helped to introduce text messaging into the U.S. And you saw that take off. And before there was text messaging, you would ask someone about if they wanted a text message, and they'd be like, why would I ever do that? I'm just going to call them. Well, there's a lot of benefits to text messaging that we didn't realize until we started using it. Same thing with the internet, mobile phone in general. And I think AI is in that same category. It's just a little bit more overwhelming because it's moving very fast, and it enables us to do things that we never thought were possible. Whereas text messaging, it kind of felt like an email. The internet kind of felt like, looking at a book or looking at a video or whatever. But AI is just kind of a lot of it's in the background, or at least what it's doing. And so it makes all of us, I think, a little bit hesitant to figure out how we embrace it. But at the end of the day, it's software. And software, at least that's been my career in my world, software is built by humans. Now, granted, more and more software is going to be built by the software itself. Mm-hmm. But it really does give us a lot of domain over how and where it goes, which I'm very optimistic about.
Your project was very interesting. I was looking at it. It all started with the experiment at the Harvard School, right?
Right.
With the students.
Yes.
What was the best way to reach out and communicate back and forth with this student population? So what did you learn from it?
We learned a lot. In fact, that company, Signalvine, it was my previous company, and it was trying to solve a real sort of basic problem that as parents, we all kind of understand and appreciate. And these Harvard researchers tried to quantify it. And that problem was basically, how do I get my kid, my student, to complete all the tasks on time that they need to go through the college going process. And so they studied it, and they said, why do some students that say they're going to go to college never show up at college? Why do students drop out of college? What are the reasons? And what they found was oftentimes the reasons were not because they couldn't pass a test or they didn't get good grades. The reasons that they drop out of college or didn't enroll in the first place were often about the communication in the process. So the communication being, if a student didn't know that they needed to submit a form by Friday and they missed it, and they found out the next week it was too late, and the process was so rigid that they would not be able to go to that school. And so what the researchers realized was that if you could actually apply behavioral economics, the same sorts of theories that we see with advertising and social media and other things, to help students take action by the time that they're supposed to, you might be able to actually have a real impact on the students going to college and graduating. And so that whole behavioral economics theory that they really zeroed in on was called nudge theory. And in communications, we all know that when you're trying to get someone on the phone or you're trying to complete a deal, sometimes it takes an extra nudge. Sometimes you've got to reach out and say, hey, did you get my email? Bump this up in your inbox. With students, they realize, okay, we can nudge them, but if we send them an email, they're probably never going to see it, because students in this day and age, and when we were building that company, weren't really looking at their email very often. And so what we realized was that what students were doing all day long was they were on their phones, and they were sending each other text messages. And so the researchers said, well, if we can actually put this nudge into a text message and nudge the student to get that form in by Friday, then we could have a really tremendous study. We can see if it actually is going to have an impact. And what they realized after they went through the process was they were able to increase the number of students that enrolled in college by, I believe, 20%, just from a text message. And what they also learned was that there was a formula. If you really wanted to get that text message to get through, you need to send the right information with a sense of urgency. So you didn't want to send it 2 weeks before the deadline or 2 hours before the deadline. So maybe 2 or 3 days before the deadline.
Interesting.
And then you also would want to make sure that it had not just the information they needed, but clarity on how to take action. The one thing that we all know is if someone says, hey, you need to do this by Friday, if you don't know what you need to do it, you can probably figure it out. But that's one extra step that you might forget to do, and then you all of a sudden you don't end up doing it. So they would have like a link to the form, say in the text message, or they would say, you need to call this number to verify your information. So all those sorts of things packaged up into one simple text message. Usually it was only, 50 characters, had an impact on just thousands, tens of thousands of students, which was really just fascinating about the power of communication when it's done well.
Interesting. So you guys were able to connect technology with the process, and then I suppose human psychology, right? Behavior. So call for action, and then it worked.
Yeah, right. There was a science that the researchers kind of got onto with the nudge theory and behavioral economics. There also was the technology. What we did was we actually took that research and we helped implement it in all these other places. And by the time we ended up selling the business, we had about 600 colleges and universities that were using our technology for different purposes. Because you can imagine the process of going to college is a great way to use technology like that. But there's all these other processes where students need a little bit of support and a little bit of help. And so in those processes, what they wound up realizing is that, a college might help students get to an advisor because they're not sure how to get all the courses in that they need to complete their major. And there's other indicators like that you can apply the technology to different use cases and certainly to even different industries, and it is applied quite a bit. But I think what we learned as a technology, and from an AI standpoint, which I know obviously is the topic of the conversation, was that we could use technology to scale the impact of that one message into hundreds of thousands of messages. And the question that everyone would always, whenever I talk to them about what we built, they'd always be like, yeah, I get those spams. And I'm like, yeah, that's the exact problem we were trying to solve. How do you get a message to a student so they think it came from their counselor and they can respond to it and interact with their counselor and it doesn't feel like it's spam. It feels like it's a very personal, relevant to them, calling them by name, all that kind of stuff. And so we used a combination of just traditional software, but we also used some AI, machine learning, natural language processing built into our technology so that when a student asked the question, if we didn't have the answer, we could find it and we could help respond with the right answer. Or if we didn't have the answer, what we could actually end up doing, which was really powerful, is we could hand off the conversation to the actual advisor themselves and they could jump in. And what wound up happening, and this is fascinating because we were using some AI in the process, but we also were using the traditional kind of counselor communicating with them, is oftentimes a student would jump in and think it was AI and they'd make some crude comment. And then the advisor would get the message and be like, no, it's me, Tom. And so we almost kind of, in a way, confused the student as to knowing whether or not it was AI or not. And that, to me, was success. Not that we were trying to trick them, but we wanted the experience to feel as genuine and human as possible without losing the power of the technology to reach thousands, hundreds of thousands of students.
And in your case, it was the first time when you had both-way communication, because from what I was learning when I was looking at your case, everything that was done previously, it was only one way. The messages were sent one way to students.
Exactly.
And you guys changed it.
There was a real, now this is going back a number of years, I'd say back in the early 20-teens, you had a lot of notification systems. That was really the way text messaging was used. Not just in education, but in general, because it was too hard to try and make it interactive, because all of a sudden that adds a whole other part of the puzzle for software to solve, which is when a message comes back, where does it go? Who does it go to? And so that was one of the things that we realized with going back to the research, that it was Ben Castleman and Lindsay Page. They were doctoral students at Harvard, school education, that were going through and really trying to solve this problem. They believed the only way this research could be successful was to not just leave the student there with questions, but you might get a lot of students that can actually take action, stay on track, enroll in college. But oftentimes it was, a little bit of a gray area. They had a special case. My parents are getting divorced. How do I complete my FAFSA? That'd be a very typical question of, you've got a different family situation. And so having two-way messaging was really critical, because it would always give some sort of a out for the student to ask a question that maybe the system didn't already know they needed to ask.
Were there any pitfalls or maybe failures through that process that you guys learned something that might be applicable to many of us today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the pitfalls I think that you learn when you're going through a process like that is that you have to really have clarity, in the organization that's using the technology has to really understand what their objective is.
Yeah, that's
and just simply implementing the technology doesn't necessarily solve the problem, because there's a lot of thought that needs to go into the message itself, thought that needs to go into, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? If it was just simply, we want to make sure the students are aware of this, but you weren't really thinking about how do we actually help them complete the process, those are going to be two very different outcomes, two very different results. And so we really learned a lot when we got into a situation where maybe there was an organization that wanted to use the technology, but they only wanted to blast information out. We would tend to not speed them along to get up and running and have revenue for the business and all that. We'd instead take our time to make sure that we educated them on the investment they were making and the results they could have. And it really did require them to think through the process. And we learned from some bad situations. I shouldn't say bad. They just weren't ideal outcomes, because you wind up having students that maybe don't feel supported because it wasn't really thought through, or you have messages that are more confusing than they are helpful. And so all of that, it was really important to make sure that everyone's understanding, it's not just technology. Technology just helps the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything else.
And today we are all talking about agentic AI. Many organizations already integrating it.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, the way that I look at it today, any business is in a way tech business, right?
Yeah.
One way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're adapting our processes, we're adapting people operations into it. And HR is becoming HR for people and HR for technology.
Mm-hmm.
Once we starting to set up this AI agents, that also will require the level of HR similarly to how we are setting up those for people. So I'm curious, what is the next, with all of the AI agentic agents, what's the next step in communication? Okay, let me paddle back. Which area do you think would be more kind of like, where shall we start? Because we can go into PR, right? We can go into marketing. We can go into HR. We can go into operations. We can set up an AI agentic assistant for communication in any of those areas.
Right.
Where would you recommend?
It's a great question. You said something earlier that I think is really important to this conversation and just to thinking about AI. And that was talking about trust.
Right.
And, one of the things that we did when we were doing the text messaging with students was we realized that initially that first message, we wanted to call the student by name and introduce who the advisor is that was sending the message or we were sending on behalf of. So it could be something like, "Hi, Brian, this is Lena. I'm here to help," and, go on with the message. So establishing the trust at the outset was really important. With AI, it's a different kind of challenge, but it's the same basic core, which is trust. So the business I'm building now is a business called OpsCanvas, and we're really in the weeds of AI and cloud. And but this problem that we have to help companies solve for is still trust. Mm-hmm. So even if it's work that is being done, behind the scenes in the cloud somewhere, no one sees the actual work, they just see the results of the work. There still is a level of trust that the organization has to have that the AI is going to do it right. It's not going to break the system. It's going to be trusted. You have confidence. And all of that has to happen before you even let, say, an agent take over a task or a workload. You have to have trust that the software works, that the AI related to the software is going to have all the information it needs to be able to answer the question. And so I think, when I think about AI and the kind of the adoption of AI, that's the cornerstone that I think everyone's starting to come around to, but it hasn't really been as talked about. It's almost, because you've got a lot of technologists that are leading the charge. Mm-hmm. They trust AI. I mean, they're software companies. They're, building large language models. They trust it. At least they trust it enough to know that it can also make mistakes, and they'll say that. But trusting it to do certain things is a hurdle you have to get over with each use case. So talking about, the different ways you could use AI within your business or different parts of a company that could use AI. I think you have to kind of maybe start with thinking about where is the trust barrier the lowest? Because if the trust barrier is really high, you could build the greatest technology in the world, but if people don't adopt it and don't start using it because they're not totally sure, then you might have to, switch in another direction, because, having that trust is a essential piece to having success with it.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I know that you belong to Forbes Technology Council, right?
Yes.
I just went to New York also for Forbes event on technology. There were a lot of conversations on trust. Somebody was saying that almost 90% of failures that is happening right now on adoption of technology is related to trust.
Yeah.
So how do we build trust?
Yes, that's a great question. So there's a lot of different parts to the trust equation. Let me start by talking about what I'm working on today, which is really it's critical to get beyond this sort of adoption curve, because I might have seen the same report that you're referencing, that you have these large enterprises that are doing all these pilots with AI, but moving them into production, 90% of them are saying, no, wait. And so part of the trust is security. I think that's a big thing for a lot of organizations. If you're using AI in HR, obviously privacy is a big issue. Security, you wouldn't want personal information about employees to get out if somehow it needs to be used in the model to do the right things or take action. So that's all, really important. But I think when I think about trust and kind of adoption of trust, there's a new kind of concept that's come out recently. It's actually literally just caught wind in the last 2 months. Is there's a missing layer within AI right now, which I'm going to use a technical term, so forgive me, but it's called a context graph. So we all know what context is. So you have to have context to know what to do, right? To make a good decision. If you're trying to figure out whether or not an employee did a good job on a project, you need to have all the context, because maybe the client was difficult. Maybe the project they're working on was, a recipe for disaster from the beginning. So there's a lot of context that you need in that. The same applies to AI. So AI actually, to work effectively, it has to have the context. And what the context graph is, it's a real fancy way of saying, we want to make sure that the AI has a memory of what it has done or what has been done by employees in the past, so that when it makes decisions in the future, it has all the proper context to make those decisions. So it's a memory of the decisions and the context of when those decisions were made. So there's a lot of great examples out there about this, but if you were to go through the process and you had to give a customer a discount to win some business, and you gave them a 20% discount, there were all these reasons why you gave them a 20% discount. What you don't necessarily know, though, is where's that captured? Is that in your CRM? Is it in an email, in a Slack message, in your head? That context of why you gave them a 20% discount is really important, because if you want AI to go and create the proposal in the future, it needs to know, okay, what's the situation where I can give a 20% discount? So it's got to have that memory. We call it decision traces, or the folks that are talking about context graphs a lot, that's the way they reference it. And the decision traces, when you gave that 20% discount and you made that decision, what's that institutional memory that we can capture in the technology so that AI acts like we would act and doesn't try and act on its own or do something that I wouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then, of course, within the organization, we have people who maybe belong to in our organization, we have technology and innovation team.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have people that come in from other teams, or whatever those teams are. And I know that you have this success with different startups. You see serial entrepreneur, and you work with different organizations, making them successful. What would be your advice? How do you create this culture where you bring people together under one umbrella and make sure that everybody sort of like get excited and not being scared of technology and start working together?
That's a great question, especially right now, because I think
Right.
the factor in what we're talking about today with AI, the factor that is new to the equation is there's a little bit of a threat of AI or an opportunity of AI. And so it adds to what's already a really hard thing to do is build a really good culture. And I think a culture, we'll go back to the word trust. I think a culture that is really good is where everyone trusts one another. And in a culture, it's different than certainly what we were just talking about. I think it has a lot more to do with making sure that you can bring your ideas to the table and they'll be considered fairly. You can collaborate and someone else isn't going to try and take credit for what the idea you had. And that you just enjoy working together and that you trust one another to get the work done, you know? And so in the companies that I've built and what we're doing now with OpsCanvas, it's always, each company's different. But I think the core elements of building culture, it starts at the top. I mean, you have to certainly take responsibility when, as the leader or the management team or whatever, and show everyone the behavior that you want them to have. But what we did a lot, and I'll go back to Signalvine, which we were talking about earlier with the text messaging business, we tried to not take ourselves too seriously. And I'm not saying that companies do, but sometimes business can get serious, right? You're trying to win the next deal or you're trying to get promoted, and it all can be very kind of anxiety driven. But the things that we did is we always tried to like create little things that people could have fun with, but also own and run with. One of the things we did was we came up with a mascot of a chicken, and it had nothing to do with Signalvine, at least from my recollection. But it became this thing where we literally had stuffed animals that were these little chicken stuffed animals, and then we had one day, like to celebrate the anniversary of the company, we literally brought a mobile zoo into the office, and like we had all these little farm animals. I mean, it was crazy, but people love that. And it was this notion of we're going to work really hard. And I know that that's the whole thing, work hard, play hard, but it's not really, I don't think it's like playing hard. I think what it is, it's giving everyone an opportunity to contribute to the building the culture, having fun with it. And I always felt like I would not have come up with the chicken idea, but I'm so glad that someone did, because it was part of building that culture, and it shouldn't have all come from me. And I just had to recognize enough that if I embraced and supported all the crazy things that everyone wanted to do, within limits, obviously you got to think about the business. You can't blow your budget on some crazy idea, or you can't do something that's going to be unsafe or, not, show well as a business. But as long as it's fun and all that good stuff, you want everyone to be part of that, and we would do a field day where we would get all sorts of, sports equipment, and we'd go out in Alexandria by the river, and we would have competitions, 3-legged races, all that kind of stuff. And it just was the sort of thing that I never was ever involved in planning it, coming with the ideas, but I helped facilitate. I made it so that everyone felt comfortable that I would support them doing that, and that was enough.
And that's interesting. And any advice for the companies that, as we are talking today, that there are businesses that have never thought of becoming a tech company, but now you have to. If you want to be relevant moving forward for the
Yeah.
next 5 years, 10 years, You are going to be adapting technology. You're going to be, because today everything is about personalization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of businesses will create their own tools. They will develop their
Right.
own tools. And by doing so, one way or another, they become tech companies.
Yeah.
Even if they're not selling software, they have their own in-house customized software. And for many, this is a rocky road because they've never done it before.
Right.
And so they have people that maybe they are hiring teams, but then they also have teams that probably stayed for many years and now they're, oops, technology company? How?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean?
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. I will concede the fact that my entire career, with the exception of a brief time when I was working in the world of philanthropy, my entire career has been in software and technology. So I've never had to ask that question of, are we a technology company or not? I kind of knew that we were a technology company. But I will say, I mean, when I think about that question and so many of the customers and partners and people that I've worked with are not software companies, are not traditional technology companies. And what I would say is, and this is maybe going back a ways, but back when companies and the sales teams weren't just going and knocking on doors, but they started getting phones at their desks and they were making phone calls to try and win business. They weren't all of a sudden a phone company, right? They were still a business, but they were using the technology that was available at the time. And I think that you've seen this all along, and companies that embraced the internet early on, a lot of them, if they were the ones that embraced it earliest in their industry, they wound up having success before anyone else caught up. And by embracing technology without necessarily being a technology company is a real differentiator, a real opportunity. Now, the biggest question I think that you might be implying when you ask that is, how do you embrace technology if you're not a technology company that knows the technology, right? That's a little bit of the challenge. And I would say, like, bring it forward to the present day with AI. There's a lot of incredible software out there and incredible tools. And there's also some not so great. Mm-hmm. And things are changing very fast. What I would say to any company that's trying to think about how do they incorporate AI into their business is, I would say, do something, because the little bit that you do, you're going to learn a lot. And I don't mean just get a ChatGPT account. We have an account where we have everyone on the team that's part of the account. And it captures institutional memory. So like when it's learning about what we do as a business, everyone else gets the advantage of that. So that's one way to take, just a chat AI system. Claude's another good one. There's a lot of good ones out there. And if you can kind of take one step where you incorporate it into the business a little bit, but I'd say I would advise that companies go one step further and try and do something and challenge themselves a little bit of using the technology in a part of their system that maybe isn't critical, but could really, someone's doing a lot of heavy lifting. And if you can kind of find a way to apply it there, it's just going to unlock ideas for the next thing. There are entire businesses now that are trying to set up their entire go-to-market. So marketing through sales and closing business, all with AI. I'm not ready to go there. There are businesses that are ready to go there. And if you talk to people in the software world, they'll say, Brian, if you don't go and start doing that now, you're going to be left behind. And but I got to do what's my comfort. And also I think to some degree, it's going to change so fast. So in some ways, if you're not the first one, you're going to get the benefit of the mistakes that others experience and make as they go through the process. But as an example, and this is a great little example, is my wife has a Pilates studio in Alexandria called Old Town Pilates, and they use a system. They've got a bunch of clients and they have all the information about their clients in this software that they use. And we're talking about like understanding the clients and how they can kind of, you know, differentiate different clients and how they communicate with them. So going back to communication and using AI. And I was like, well, I got an idea. So I'm kind of the acting CFO. So that's why I was involved in it. I went into the system and I pulled out all the raw data from the software that they were using of all the clients and information about how many classes they had gone to, when they came last, how much they've spent over the course of, you know, being a client of the studio. I put it into ChatGPT. I didn't have any sensitive information in there, but I put the information that would help me organize it, the metadata, if you will. And that I then asked ChatGPT to tell me like 5 or 6 different things. Like, who are the clients who we should be reaching out to because they haven't been coming as often as the other clients? Mm-hmm. Who are the clients that, you know, and I went through all this list of things, and it created within minutes a spreadsheet with every client and a checkbox about against which list they fit into. And I mean, granted, there's software out there that can do that business intelligence anyways, but this is a small Pilates studio. And it was just an example of using AI to facilitate the communication the studio is doing with the tools that were at our hands. And it was just, you know, it opened my eyes because I hadn't really thought that, I could actually get that sort of information at my fingertips to help the studio. And it was really incredible results.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep thinking about it that we can use AI and we can use other automation tools to dedicate certain things in communication area. Now, that will give us time to use what we can use as humans for human connection, right? Mm-hmm. In your opinion, what that would be? Because again, human connection is priceless. Mm-hmm. When we want to connect with our clients or with other businesses, our strategic partners, our vendors. So once you have this human connection, that's business, because to me, business is people and mm-hmm. people is connection. But then, of course, we can outsource all these other things that will also help with communication. Mm-hmm. So, like, do you have any story like that? That was a perfect story.
Yeah. So I think so. It's fascinating because I agree 100%. And I mean, we just had the example not too long ago coming out of COVID, right? Everyone was locked up in their houses. They weren't getting together socially. And the moment that like conferences started happening again and you had, you know, dinners happening again, there would be more people coming than were before because it just was evidence that people miss that like you can be on Zooms all day and sending emails and Slacks and getting business done. But if you don't have that in person, that physical interaction with those around you, we as humans, we miss that. We don't get as much out of the communication. And, you know, there's a lot that happens when we're sitting here live in person that we could be on a video call right now and we wouldn't pick those things up. In fact, it's so important. And I don't know, this just came out, I think literally today or yesterday, recently, that Apple just made their largest acquisition. Did you hear about this?
No, I didn't know.
So their largest acquisition, and I don't remember the name of the company, but I remember what the name of what the company does. I'm sure it'll be easy to find. They bought a company for $2 billion. And the company, what they do is they use video to be able to know what someone's saying without hearing what they're saying.
Interesting.
Based on their facial, you know, not just their mouth movement, but everything else. And it was fascinating because it's exactly to your point. I think what, you know, and Apple's obviously a brilliant company, but I think that's where they're trying to use technology to kind of plug the gap that you identified, which is like, and technology is never going to plug it, but there is a gap. And so if you need to use technology to try and understand all those informal cues, those silent cues that people are giving when they're in person, and Apple's going to pay $2 billion for that company, obviously it's very important and very valuable. And, you know, from my experience, I think what I've seen and what I know is, I shouldn't say I know, what I believe strongly about AI is that all of the things that it either takes us a long time to do, we don't like doing them, or candidly, our little human brains can't process all the information to get to the right answer quickly enough. That AI is going to help us do those things so we can spend more time doing the things we want to do. We can find the people that we need to, you know, spend time with. Now, granted, there's going to be people that are going to go off into the chatbot wilderness and develop relationships and get married to chatbots and all this crazy stuff that people are talking about. But I think by and large, the average person, the AI is going to help facilitate, kind of like social media did, but hopefully this time in a better way. And, you know, that it's going to help facilitate identifying and making sure that we're having communications. We're not that far off from that movie, Her, which was a brilliant movie about the future. And I mean, the assistant in Her, in that movie, I think about that a lot because I think that's where AI comes in and helps us kind of make sure that we're making the best use of our time, so that we have more time to interact in person, knowing who's around that I might be able to get together with, all of that. And going into a conversation, knowing what we should be talking about. Like maybe I forget what we talked about last time, if we had a conversation a year ago, but the AI could help me kind of make sure that we felt like we never skipped a beat. And I think that's where it's going to be really, really powerful.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, my company is also, we work in communication, cross-cultural communication. And yeah, the productivity is so much higher. And again, the people can content, like, you know, if we are working on voiceover, and there are certain things that you can outsource again to technology and concentrate on those little bits of sound. If you like sound of the voice, you can concentrate on that and then put other parts, outsource it to technology. And because before that, those projects, I remember those projects was so long, and you have to separate them and spend so much time on the parts that, as you mentioned, they were not pleasant.
Right. Yeah.
Now all of it could be passed on into this box and it will be done by itself. But then you can get creative and spend time on things that really matter to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think that's super exciting. There is like some work that we all need to do between here and there. And one of the things we focus a lot on is how do you create the guardrails that ensure that whatever AI you're using is not making mistakes, isn't going off in the wrong direction, and how do you make sure that it stays on track? Like, there's a lot of things that I think if you were to ask me today if I would go and, you know, hand off a project to an AI agent to do just out of the blue, I probably would be hesitant because I'm not sure that. Now, I'm sure there are agents that are good at this, but I think generally speaking, the large language models that are out there, if you used an agent from one of them, they're so general purpose that you have the possibility that it's going to not do the job well. And certainly I think, and this is for everyone that was worried about AI taking jobs, what I think is and there's a lot more research I think coming out on this, is that the AI is going to do the work that people, the part of their job that they don't like doing, or that it's hard to get it right all the time. And all the other stuff that people are just going to be better at doing, a lot of the other stuff, the interpersonal communications, the creativity, all the the original thinking that we all think about and contribute to our job or to our business, that's all still going to be really important. And there's a lot of people in this research that are you hear coming out saying that it's not about replacing jobs, it's about replacing work.
Right.
And the work oftentimes just means that we can get more done. In the same way that we get more done now because we have connectivity with email and Zoom all the time. I mean, it's a totally different scale for sure. But if I can get, 2 or 3 times as much work done because AI is doing all the manual, maybe busy work that I had to do before, and I can put all my energy into the things that are really my value to the solving the problem or whatever, that makes AI incredibly valuable. And I think that's the vision that the Sam Altmans of the world all have, is that it really is about taking that place of the things that we have to do but we don't really want to do, so that we can do the things that as humans we're uniquely qualified to do well.
Yeah, precisely. What I was thinking with the agentic AI, if I'm thinking about the office of the future, if you can imagine that each employee would have their own assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and that assistant will be assigned to the job that the person or work the person is doing, all the training would go away, because then the new employee arrives to the company, assistant is being assigned. That assistant already has all that tribal knowledge from all the previous employees. So in a sense, that assistant is training the person. They're learning from each other, because the AI employee, I should say,
Right, yeah.
training the newcomer and also learning from the newcomer. That personalization, I suppose, connects, right?
Yeah.
And then when the new employee leaves, all the knowledge stays with this AI assistant, and so it continues. But then, but there, of course, that the rails need to be put on where the information can be shared, where not. But can you imagine how the companies are going to be looking moving forward?
Yeah, I think I agree with almost everything that you said. The one thing I would say that I think is still not something that an AI assistant is going to be able to help is they're not going to be able to give someone experience, right? And I think that's where they're going to accelerate the training in ways we can't imagine. They're going to be a safety net for mistakes and for getting up to speed faster. So you're doing your job at an A+ level when it normally would have taken 6 months or whatever, and you're going to be doing that in the first week. All those things I think are true, but you still may not, it's not going to be able to give a new employee all of the experience. And that's not to say that it'll feel to the employee like they have the experience because they have the historical knowledge, to your point. But are they going to feel as confident that they know what to do or what decision to make? And to some degree, it goes back to trust. Do they trust that assistant, that the assistant really, has all the right answers and everything else? The way we think about agentic AI in my current business, we're using AI to help everyone run software in the cloud, but it's really hard to run software in the cloud. And it's a lot of humans that are using software to run software in the cloud. So it's a weird sort of ecosystem. But all the work that's done there could be done by agents. Because it's all, it's very complex, but it also are things that if the agent has the right context, going back to context and the context graph and the right memory of how to make a decision, it could go and take over tasks. And so we don't necessarily think of agents in that world as an assistant or holding a job. We think of it as skills. So we have, say, an agent that's going to help you save money. because it knows all the tricks about saving money. And then we have an agent that has a skill to make sure that it knows how to tune a database. All of that sort of is important from a skill standpoint, because what you wind up doing is you break the work into different pieces than you had before. And that can also make you more efficient. But it also allows, when you start to dole out the work in that way, it opens up new opportunities for people and the human element of it. In that world, I think humans are much more about making sure that the business objectives are being carried out, and that that you're doing all of the things that are good for the business, as opposed to most companies. You said companies aren't software. You feel like, are you a software company? In my world, all these businesses are all of a sudden cloud software companies, and they have to like spend millions of dollars to learn how to run software in the cloud, but they're an airline. It's like, it's the weirdest sort of disconnect. That's a natural place where the skills to run an airline and have pilots and, mechanics and everything, you shouldn't have to have cloud software engineers. You should be able to have people that know how to manage the business of the cloud. But all the sort of nuts and bolts, that's not their core business. So having agents that have the skills to do all those things is really powerful. And I think when you take it to marketing or some of the businesses that you're areas that you're talking about, I think you can think of it as skills, right, and not necessarily jobs. And so when you think about it in terms of skills, there are going to be skills that cross over. So you might have a skill like a writing skill that is crosses over between marketing and sales. That's kind of an easy one. But there's a lot of other ways when you think about, and skills are a lot more than just writing is the easy one that we all think about today, but it's all the other things that you do as a business and as an employee, where I might have 15 skills that I know how to do, but maybe 5 of those skills are things that an agent could do. And so I'm just going to focus on the 10 that are really core to the human element of what I bring to the table.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tell us about your current company, OpsCanvas.
Sure. Yeah. So as I was saying, OpsCanvas is exciting because we believe that AI is there to solve really complex problems. And we've seen what large language models can do within medical research and within a lot of areas, not to mention, obviously, trying to figure out what's the best way to, best recipe for making something on the grill. And obviously you can search for that, but AI can give you all the, the different versions that you want. Complexity, though, comes in a lot of different forms. And in the software world, one of the areas that companies struggle with more than the average, aside from right now trying to figure out how they use AI and all of that, that's certainly a big core focus, is how do they run their cloud software efficiently? And what I mean by that is companies are spending millions of dollars every month to run their software in the cloud. Depending on the size of the company, it could be only tens of thousands of dollars, but for some companies, it's millions a month. For a software company, they might be spending 10 to 30% of their revenue on just their cloud costs, running their software in the cloud. So that's a huge, massive amount. A larger company, a larger traditional enterprise is only spending 1 to 3%. But the point is that they're spending a lot of money running the software in the cloud. And why is that? Well, one of the reasons that they're spending a lot of money is because it just is expensive to run the software in the cloud. The alternative was they had it in their own data center, in their office on, stilts and with a server room and all that kind of stuff. And that a lot of companies have chosen to put it at AWS or Microsoft. And so what's created this complexity is you now have thousands and thousands of pieces of software that all have to talk to one another. And you've got, a average company is going to spend, is going to have, dozens of applications. For instance, I was at a conference and Starbucks was talking about when you order a cup of coffee, they run all their software in the cloud to process that cup of coffee. When you order a cup of coffee on the mobile app and you go to pick it up and you pick it up, they ask the audience, how many applications, different software applications did the audience think that they had to use to get that cup of coffee on the counter for you ready to pick up? You have any guess?
I have no idea.
I believe the number was 57.
57?
Yes.
How?
It's all like when you start thinking about it, it starts to make sense. It's still hard for me to think about 57, but if you think about, you've got your loyalty system, you have the payment system, you have the HR system for the barista, you have the mobile app itself, you have sourcing the beans in, South America or whatever. You might have delivery transportation system. So you've got all these different systems that are working together. So going back to what do we do and why is this so important is that Starbucks isn't unique. We all know them and we all can appreciate and understand that experience, but it could be John Deere, and I'm guessing John Deere probably has as many, maybe more, just to get tractors built and shipped out and everything else. And so what happens when you have 57 applications and millions of dollars a month on the cloud is it all becomes very inefficient, meaning you've got a lot of software there that you no longer need, but it's so complicated you don't even know where it is. You don't know if you pull something out of your cloud, is it going to break everything? And so all these challenges really are. I see almost every company I talk to has these challenges. Same thing. And so they're spending, Gartner researchers actually estimate about 30% of what they spend on their cloud bill is being spent on waste. So things that they no longer need, they no longer use, but they can't find it, they can't remove it. And so kind of like Rocket Money. So like with Rocket Money, they give you an app and they find all your subscriptions that you've got 5 Netflix subscriptions.
Yeah.
You don't need all those, and they remove them for you and bring your bill down. We kind of do that sort of thing, but for large companies running software in the cloud. And where AI comes in is that to actually solve that complexity, to find that 30%, to make everything seamlessly work together is in some ways so complicated and difficult and expensive for humans and humans with software to do all by themselves. So it's a perfect use case for AI. And so what our vision is that we believe that that whole world of cloud operations, which right now companies are spending billions and billions of dollars on, that we can deploy a workforce of agents to run and manage all of that. And it's not going to happen overnight, but over time, if you can do that, then you have solved a problem that nearly every company on the planet has with AI. And so that's the way that we're approaching it.
Oh, that's so interesting. And how did you find this problem to be solved? I'm curious.
It's a great question. It was at Signalvine.
Oh, wow.
So when we were building the text messaging platform, so we were using AI as part of the way we handled the messages, but we also were hosting our software in the cloud. And we had in the world of software, the person that runs and manages your cloud software, they have a lot of different names: cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, system reliability engineer. They've got all the names, but in essence, they're doing kind of the same thing as making sure it's running, it's secure, and everything's getting updated and deployed to the cloud the same way. So we had one DevOps engineer, and it felt like everything we ever wanted to do as a business, he had too much work on his plate. He couldn't get around to it. He's a brilliant guy, but we just always were kind of behind trying to keep up with it. And then lo and behold, like there were a few times when things happened that were so scary, like existential to the business where, oh, sorry, we were updating the software and we accidentally deleted the database. We're going to see if we can rebuild it, but we might have lost it forever. I'm like, that's the business, you know? So you have this world that your business relies on that, that relies on, you know, a few specialists to make sure that it's working well in the cloud. And at the time we were a text messaging business. We weren't trying to be a cloud business. And so now that database got rebuilt. The engineer we had was a brilliant guy and he's fantastic. But my CTO in that business, Jason, and I, after we sold the business and the company we sold it to was like, we don't really need you anymore. That happens a lot of times when you sell your business. We were like, what's the problem that we want to solve next? Like, what is it that, and we kept going back to this cloud thing. And the reason we kept going back to it is because we would butt heads almost every month because he was the CTO and I was the CEO. And I'd be like, why's the cloud bill up? And he'd be like, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And then I learned over time that it was because it was really hard to figure out. And so that kind of made us aware that, okay, there's the problem. And so we started talking to other people. And first I started talking to other startup CEOs and everyone was like, yeah, the same thing happens with us. Yeah, the same thing. And I was like, I'm looking for someone that doesn't have this problem and I couldn't find them. And so then we started talking to larger companies and larger companies are a little more mature as we like to think about it in the cloud. But even as mature as they are, they still had all these problems. And so there's a lot of great companies that try and solve this problem. We just felt like we're coming at it from a different angle. We're coming at it as a software company that we had built at Signalvine. If we had to start over, what would we do? You know, that's kind of the classic entrepreneur thing. Like, couldn't we do that? And so we really believe that we could simplify and solve the problem ultimately using AI. Now, AI has come a long way since we sold Signalvine. So the actual opportunity or the ability for us to solve it using AI has become crystal clear. Whereas when we started it, we just believed in the potential of AI and where it was going. Mm-hmm. And so as we kind of think about it, I mean, it really is a full circle moment. Because, you know, when I got started, my first company was building software for the internet. And now the cloud is really running everything kind of on the internet. And it just feels like we're trying to really use AI to solve the problem that all the companies that want to use AI are having. It's kind of a weird sort of, nesting sort of problem or solution, but we're so excited about it.
What a great story. It all started with your communication company. You got the lesson, you found the problem.
Yeah.
Now you're resolving that problem for on a much larger scale, I should say.
Yeah, and I think that's the nature of a serial entrepreneur, is you're always asking, why does this work this way? Why is this not better? Is there a better way to do it? And I think it is really hard, actually, as entrepreneurs to find unique problems that haven't been solved because there's so many brilliant companies out there and brilliant people. So usually when you find that it hasn't been solved, maybe for a reason that is, you know, the reason you don't want to try and solve it, or maybe it hasn't been solved because the technology to solve it hasn't quite gotten there yet. And that's kind of the situation we feel like we've been in with OpsCanvas, is the technology to solve the problem is coming into focus. And so this really is kind of a perfect storm, perfect opportunity for this business.
Do you think entrepreneurship, to be entrepreneur, do you think it's a mindset that you have, or do you think you come to it through the life experience?
It's a great question. So I think that there is a mindset element to it. You've kind of got to be a risk taker to some degree. and you've got to have a desire to solve problems and kind of approach the world in different ways. But I actually would also say, and I think this is true because I often sometimes get pigeonhole myself into thinking about entrepreneurship as other companies like the ones I've built. But entrepreneurship has all shapes and sizes, from, the mom and pop restaurant to the new, boutique down the street. And I think the thing that I think what it takes is you have to really love something. And you have to really kind of be willing to just invest your all into it. I know that that's maybe a little cliche, but it's true, because I know that there's a lot of really smart potential entrepreneurs that try and solve a problem part-time. And that's really hard to do, because you kind of have to just throw yourself into it. But that takes the ability to be able to afford to throw yourself into it. It takes all sorts of other challenges. But I think really you have to have that. The mindset is certainly an important part. But I think having the right mindset without a passion for what you're doing or the problem you're solving is probably not going to go well. So you really have to make sure that you're focused on it. I actually have advised a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's interesting because the formula is almost always seems like it's the same, or the process, I should say. And that is, I start talking to them, they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this new thing. And I'm like, okay. And we talk about, why do you want to do it? What's the problem? And they're like, yeah, but I'm not sure if I want to do it. And then we talk again, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, and then by the third or fourth conversation, I'm like, yeah, I think I might do this. Do you think I'll be successful? I'm like, you know what? Anyone that goes and thinks that hard about it and then believes so much in their ability to solve the problem that they're willing to jump in and do it, quit their job or whatever it is to do it, I'm like, you're going to be successful. Like, the people that kind of just think it's easy, because clearly the people that are thinking that long and hard about it, they know it's a risk. They know it's hard. They know that they've got to really think about it. And I'm like, if you got to the point where you're ready to, jump in the deep end, you're going to be successful because you've done all the hard thinking. And I think that really is true of a lot of entrepreneurs, that they don't really, they haven't done it before, or for whatever reason, they don't necessarily trust themselves. And I think that if you can convince yourself to jump into it, you probably have gotten enough work done to be successful, because you've had to think that hard about it.
And here we go. Goes back to trust.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Now we're
yeah.
talking about trusting yourself.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This has been very, to me, motivational, I'm sure, to everybody who has been listening to us.
Right.
So if you are to give us some words of wisdom, where to start?
Oh, wow. I would say, the thing that we have to always remember when new technology is coming out, and I feel like I've had to have these conversations with, certainly with parents and things like that, is don't worry about messing up. Don't worry about not knowing what you're doing. Don't worry about whether or not someone else has a head start and knows what they're doing. The reality of it is that the only way you learn is to just give it a go, give it a try. And, you're not going to figure out how to get good at using ChatGPT unless you are just really diving into it. You're not going to get good at anything if you're not doing that. But I think it all starts, technology, for whatever reason. Well, I think we probably know the reasons, but it often is a barrier that people feel like they don't know enough. They're not capable enough to really learn it. It's too new of a technology. And I don't believe that at all. I think it's all about having that confidence and willingness to make mistakes, because, and the technology is moving so fast that there may be someone that knows more about AI today, and you may jump in tomorrow and start fiddling with it. And in 3 months, you might be ahead of them because it's changing so fast. So just, I think it really is all about being willing to try and learn about it. And the more you learn about it, I think particularly with AI, I think the people that are so worried about it from a job perspective maybe haven't gotten into it as much. Well, there's a lot of other reasons why they can be worried about it from a job perspective. I understand it's a complicated issue, but I think that it's hard to really try and evaluate what all is going on around you with AI if you're not using it, if you're not in there in the trenches with it.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. And for everybody else, that was a conversation from Brian Kathman with OpsCanvas. Brian, where can we find you?
You can find me at Brian at OpsCanvas.com or OpsCanvas.com. And thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
We are going to put all the information for Brian and the notes of our podcast. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I love your website, your values say learn, grow, have fun.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, and definitely have fun with technology and start your new projects and have fun with this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you for tuning in into Connected Conversation. We truly value your feedback and would love to hear from you. Please let us know what story you would like to hear next. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Let's keep the conversation going, and let's continue to inspire each other. Let's stay in touch. Thank you.